Thanks so much.
It's 3 p.m. now.
Melinda, isn't it always hot in KL?
32 degrees and raining every day of the year.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
It's just hot.
Thank you so much for taking your time to attend the session today. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone there are a couple of house rules. So please keep yourself muted throughout this session so that our listeners are able to hear our speakers clearly. And if you do have any questions, put your questions in the chat. You can enter it into the Facebook chat as well. That's live if you want to share it to your friends. So, a little self-introduction. I'm Sunil. I'm a student from Dwi Emas International School under teacher Melinda, and I'm a year 11 student studying there currently. So today's talk is about the new epoch in education for a VUCA world. So I guess we can go with a short introductory of our speakers. So first off, we have Mike Handcock. Mike Handcock is a chairman and founder of the Circle of Excellence Group, a conglomerate of companies including Ring of Steel Investments, 6 Continent Events, Worldwide Business Intelligence, and Global Expert Institute. I guess you can add on a bit about yourself.
Well, I was originally born in Australia, although I spent most of my life in New Zealand. And through business, we've worked in over 50 countries around the world, Sunil. Malaysia a lot, been doing business in Malaysia for probably since you were born, basically. And we're really looking forward, well, I'm looking forward personally to sharing all about different aspects of the VUCA world and how it's affecting education and youth development. So let's talk about that today.
Oh no, I think my Zoom's disappeared. Let me
No, you're still on.
Oh, on my screen.
We can see you.
All right, okay, so moving on, we have Landi Jac. So Landi is the Global Director of Worldwide Business Intelligence, part of a conglomerate of 5 international companies that has now touched the lives of over 300,000 entrepreneurs worldwide. She holds a master's degree in industrial psychology and cum laude and consults with numerous business leaders and entrepreneurs worldwide. So I guess you can also add on a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Sunil. It's lovely to be here with all of you today. Yeah, I'm more the person who went the academic route and then from there went into corporate and then from corporate jumped into entrepreneurship. So went far and wide. These days, over the past few years, I've been traveling with Mike around the world, promoting really worldwide business intelligence. Realizing that so many entrepreneurs are struggling because they're educated wrong. They don't sit with the right information. Not only business information, but mindset information. So I'll be touching a little bit on that today, on how we can use different intelligences in our education for this VUCA world.
Perfect. All right, so our last speaker is Melinda Lim, or I'll address her as Teacher Melinda from here on out in this call because she's my teacher as well. So Melinda Lim is the founder and chief academic officer of ACE EdVenture Group, and the principal of Dwi Emas International School. She's an engineer by training, but she's been teaching physics, chemistry, mathematics, and additional mathematics in Singapore and Malaysia for over 30 years now. So I guess you can also add on a bit about yourself.
Hi. I grew up in Malaysia and continued my education in Singapore, and then went on to teach in Singapore. And while I was there, I was exposed to quite a lot of business training because I was looking to explore further beyond education. And because of that, that led to starting our own education system here in Malaysia. And from one school became 2, became the 3rd school, where it was the first, it is the first entrepreneurial school in Malaysia, and that's Dwi Emas International School. So we believe that the education needs to prepare students for the future, not for the present, or not just for the present, yeah? And there are many things that the education, as in the academic subjects alone, is insufficient to get students ready for the future.
Nice. All right, so the people that just came, today's title is A New Epoch in Education for a VUCA World. These are our three speakers, Melinda Lim, Landi Jac, uh, Mike Handcock, and I'm your moderator, Sunil. So I guess we can touch on our topic first off. So I guess someone can introduce what is the VUCA world. So VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But what is it? I guess one of y'all can share. I guess.
Who would you like to share, Sunil?
I guess Mike and Landy.
Let's start with Mike.
Well, to me, it's just the world. And I think as you get older, you realize that there's terminology that comes and goes, you know. When I was growing up, there was yuppies, which meant young urban professional. And so, you know, VUCA to me, it's my whole life, the world's been volatile. If you talk to your grandparents or great-grandparents who lived through one of the wars, their life was a lot more volatile than ours. So I think what it's about is it's about being adaptable and resilient. And I think when I listened to Melinda talk before, it triggered so many things in me because, you know, most education doesn't teach kids to be adaptable and resilient. It teaches them that there's one way. In fact, the word university comes from the word uni, and versity actually means one spin. So university means one way. Whereas if you look at somebody who went to, say, became a scholar, the word scholar literally comes in ancient Greek, and Byron should know this, I see he's on the call, comes from the word observer. So, you know, we have changed from being observers in the world, which is really what we should be. And as we observe, we can pivot, which is another word everybody's using today, which will disappear in 5 years, as will augmented intelligence and all the other things that we think are so relevant and so hip today. They're all going to disappear. So, you know, to be an observer in life and to be able to be resilient and adapt to change, change is the only constant that we have in this universe. Our universe is constantly changing. As we're having this call, our Earth is literally spinning at tens of thousands of kilometers an hour, and that's revolving around the sun, and that's revolving around Alcyone and the Pleiades and all that sort of thing. So change is constant. VUCA is what we're calling it at the moment. But if you think that the pandemic or anything that's happening in our world at the moment is going to go away, it's not. It's just going to get difficult and change and adapt, and we're going to have to do the same all throughout our lives.
Interesting. So Melinda, do you have anything to add on? And what is the VUCA world to you as an educator?
Oh, I think like I agree with Mike. Okay, that it has been around. Our world has always been volatile. It's just that this is now the word that is being coined, and I found that being adaptable has helped me a lot. And our education system right now is really not preparing students for that. To be ready for when the answers are not always one answer, when it can be, you know, things can change at any time. So how do you prepare for something like that? And what we realized was that in order to prepare yourselves for a world that's constantly changing, you have to develop skills. It is not about knowing the academic subjects well. It is actually being ready with a whole host of skills to be able to change, adapt as the society changes, as the world moves. Yeah.
I guess personally I could agree as well, because undergoing education right now, it's actually really interesting because things keep changing all the time. So even our syllabus as we speak, my own syllabus changes all the time. So I guess it's very interesting. So Mike and Landy, you meet a lot of people from around the world. What are your views on what's trending right now or what's happening around the world and how it's changing?
Sunil, I think what we're seeing, because a lot of our clients, you know, has been in many places far far around the world. So you have different cultures, different perspectives, different this, different that. But the more you work with different types of people, the more you realize how everyone is actually incredibly similar. You know, that you can either go into the world with a set of goggles of how people are different or how people are similar. And I think what's trending for us around the world at the moment is that everyone is freaking out. uh, and the reason it's so probably is because of the unknown. And you know, you heard Mike say that, and you now heard Melinda say that, but the unknown is scary for a lot of people. Why? Because people want to predict the future. People want to sit with a crystal ball and develop patterns in which they can predict the future. So what we teach a lot of our entrepreneurs, even before, you know, the pawpaw hit the fan, is to really become certain in yourself and have a level of predictability in yourself, because that makes your ability to handle this unknown world a little better. And I mean, Melinda couldn't have said it better. It's about skills. The more you're going to have skills within yourself, the more you're going to create some level of predictability in your own competency. What can I do and what can't I do? And also a little bit more predictability in your own behavior. So in the beginning of the year, you know, people were very excited. People were really looking forward to a world of possibility, a world of options, a world of travel. I mean, we had our calendar set for 17 countries this year. We only got to tick off 5, and then COVID struck. So we only did 5 out of 17. And when that happens, you have to adapt. So you're asking about trends. People are trying to adapt. Every single person is trying to pivot and adapt to their new circumstances. Not sure really what next year and the year after that's going to look like.
That's really interesting. So all of y'all has mentioned about skills. So obviously as educators, y'all are trying to give us these skills as students. So I guess we can talk about your education. So what was your education like, and did it prepare you for the VUCA world, or are y'all learning that and now trying your best to convey it to the rest of us? I guess we can start with teacher Melinda. So
Okay. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Penang, and the traditional education system. But I realized that what prepared me actually was all the things that we did outside of school. And my sister and founder for ACE EdVenture groups, we grew up running around all over the place. We were cycling everywhere. And my mom allowed us to do our own thing once we were 12 years old. And I think that really prepared us for what else is out there. Yeah. So yeah, the school is the usual, your academic subjects and all that, but we were really exposed to a whole lot of other things outside of school. And I think that made a big difference. And also when I went to Singapore to do my degree in engineering, that also threw me into a space where I'm alone on my own. I had to figure out what to do next. And I just fell into teaching, not intentional. Intention was to be an engineer, but I realized I didn't want to do that. And while I was teaching in the schools, I realized that there had to be more. There were things that were happening in the schools that I couldn't agree with. And so when the opportunity for starting the school here in Malaysia came about, of course it was Anne who came up with it. And yeah, it was like designed for what I could do and what I could contribute. And that's why our schools are so different, because we decided whatever doesn't work in the traditional schools, we would throw it out, okay? And we put in what we felt was necessary.
I guess you could say that was very, I think that was very well said, like as me undergoing your education system. So I guess I can definitely say that's true. So I guess that's from Malaysia side. I understand that Mike and Landy, y'all studied in other countries. So I guess y'all can share a bit of your experience in education in your countries.
Sure, Sunil. Sunil, how old are you?
I am turning 16 this year.
Oh,
Yep. Okay.
nice.
Well, congratulations. When I was exactly your age, I lost my mother. She had a heart attack and died, and she was a solo mother, and I'm an only child. So, if you could imagine going into the next part of your education and there's just you. So, I was living at my best friend's parents' house with my best friend for the last 2 years of my education. I say that because I think it's relevant to my perspective on education. I left the school system thinking I never want to go to another class or do any more education in my life. And the reason why was twofold. One is because I felt that nothing that I was being educated on really actually prepared me for anything that I was experiencing in life whatsoever. So I was totally unprepared for life. Nobody told me that my parents may die. Nobody told me that I'd have to get a job at nearly 18 years old. Nobody told me any of that. The careers officer in school couldn't help me. So, and then to sort of add insult to that injury, if you like, in my last year in school, I topped English literature. I was the top in the school for English literature. I won the prize for that. Yet I failed the government exam, but I thought I'd nailed it. And so I actually failed the subject. So I went to my English literature teacher, and I was going to one of the best schools apparently in the country. And I went to my English literature teacher and I said, how can this happen? I was devastated, as you can imagine, for the students that are listening to this. And he said to me, Mike, you've got too good a grasp of the subject. You understood it better than the examiners, and the way in which you talk is too highbrow for them. You're way above the examiners. Sorry, that's just the way the system works. And I'm like, are you absolutely kidding me? So I lost interest in education. I never went to university until I was over 30. And then because I wanted to get ahead in my job at the time, I thought I better go and get a degree. And then I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go through all this stuff that I had to go through in education. So I sat down with every head of the department at university and said, how do I pass this subject in the shortest possible time? What do I need to do and what don't I need to do? And every one of them told me, and I got my degree in 2 years, and I got 2 academic prizes topping the country. So it was a totally different experience than my high school. So this led me, and when I first met Melinda and Anne many years ago now, and I saw what they were doing, and it was so different. I thought, this is what everybody needs. Everybody needs to learn skills. And Melinda used the word skills. She didn't use academic targets or exams. Exams are flawed because in entrepreneurship, which is, where we exist, heck, if you're right 45% of the time, you're probably a multimillionaire. If you're right 60% of the time, you're a billionaire. Yet, in school, we're meant to get 80 or 90%. And it was fascinating, just to finish this up, that when Landi and I met 7 years ago, and one day she had a look in a suitcase I had that was from my childhood, had all my childhood books in it from when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old that my mum had bought me. She said, Mike, you've become everything in this suitcase. Everything that you're interested in, your mum had put in front of you when you were actually between 1 and 7 years old. And when I looked at those books, I thought, yeah, you're right. I could see everything. I could see my life. So it wasn't the education system that rounded me, and I was very anti-education for a lot of my young adult life. It was actually what my mother had installed in me as values, and then later on what I saw as being skills, which Melinda put so beautifully, which I think, in Malaysia, in the schools that you have there, you do so very, very well. And it's one of the reasons we love who you guys are. Landi?
Fascinating, that bookcase when we found it. For me, Sunil, I grew up in South Africa in quite a small town. But, if you combine the Western and the Eastern star signs, I'm a Gemini fire snake. So I just love learning, and I've loved learning from a very, very young age, whether that's with books, or I didn't necessarily enjoy going to school because they didn't feed me with enough information. But school did teach me a lot of things. It taught me how to sit still in a class and not to backchat, and it taught me discipline, and it taught me things like be there on a certain time, and it taught me to get along with people that I didn't like and things like that. So it didn't really taught me to too much in terms of the subjects. I didn't really have subjects in school that I enjoyed. I think I enjoyed biology a lot, but I didn't really like that, they were cutting up frogs and things like that. So So school was school, but I honestly couldn't wait for it to finish. I wanted to go and learn more, and I wanted to learn more about the things I like, psychology and how the mind works and how people operate. So for me, when I left school and my dad wanted me to go to university, which I really, really appreciate today, because that gave me a lot of exposure and learning as well. But when I went to university again, I didn't understand the options, There were subjects and there were degrees that I can choose from, but nothing was really interesting to me. And so eventually I did my first degree, and then I did my second degree, and then I did by my third degree, I found industrial psychology, and I enjoyed that. But still, as I went along, even when I went corporate and you look at the different departments, I was like, oh, which one of the departments will I go into? So for me, as I went on and on and on, and eventually jumped into entrepreneurship, only then did I become happy with education, because now I had more options and now I had more things to learn. And these days I just expose myself. I'm constantly reading and learning and going on. But what I've learned with the educational system and the way it set me up is that we didn't have enough options. If I look at education today, all I want to do for people, especially entrepreneurs, is just expose them to more options, more things to learn, more subjects, because I've learned on this journey that education really is about understanding who you are. Because if you understand who you are, you know which subjects you want to learn. So that's why these days I'm quite big in helping people, especially in our ecosystem, understand who they are. Because if they understand who they are, they know, oh, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a dancer, I want to be a rat, I want to be a air hostess, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a clown. But people don't know that.
Wow. It's really interesting. So I guess education then, because obviously I'm a lot younger, so my education system and yours probably is very, very different. So my question, I guess this would be for teacher Melinda. As an educator yourself, how do you think education has changed from, let's say, your time compared to our time as a 16-year-old undergoing high school now?
Okay, the kind of education I went through, I think, is still currently very much in most of our country, as well as in most other parts of the world. Yeah, the traditional system, which is ideal if you're preparing people for a job, especially in industrial jobs where you have to follow rules, you have to wear uniforms, you clock in at the same time, you leave at the same time. That's fine, yeah. But I think the world has shifted quite drastically, and the kind of jobs that are available now is a whole lot, and with a lot more variety. Plus, the whole shift to small business owners is also happening quite a lot. So in general, most places are not preparing children for that kind of world. So if the intention of the parents is to get the kids ready for a job, we're talking about low-lying fruits here, yeah, like so like your traditional jobs, yeah, as we term it. So then it's fine, okay. But if you want to do more, you want to, you see greater opportunities, you see jobs that never existed before and things like that. Right now, most education systems are not preparing kids for that. Yeah, so in order for that kind of world, we have to really expose children to entrepreneurship. And the truth of entrepreneurship is not about starting a business or running a business. It's actually really a mindset, because you can be an entrepreneur while working for somebody. Because if you're thinking in terms of this is my business, even though I'm being employed, you're an entrepreneur, right? So why limit yourself to just being an employee? Yeah, so that is yeah, how I see things going.
All right. So I noticed that all three of y'all mentioned about entrepreneurship in all three of your educations and how y'all sort of looked at it in terms of education. So I'd like to ask about your education philosophy. I guess all three of y'all can add on to this on your own perspectives. It would be great if all of y'all can give a perspective about it. What is your education philosophy and how does that tie into entrepreneurships? Because I understand all three of y'all are entrepreneurs. So my question would be, what is your education philosophy?
For me, Sunil, it's the more you can expose yourself, the better, because ultimately it's no longer about a job clarifying your role or even knowing what jobs is going to exist in the future. It really is about building your own skills portfolio, your own skill set. And with that, you can go anywhere. But again, you're not going to really know what skills you need unless you expose yourself. That's why me and Mike love traveling, because traveling is a school. Traveling is a teacher, because it exposes you. It puts you in different circumstances, and then you will go in one circumstance. You may be standing on an airport, and now you have to sort of convince someone there that you're allowed to enter the country or something like that. So now you become a deal maker. Now you're standing on that airport and you need to become a deal maker suddenly. And then you're sitting in a restaurant and you trying to have a conversation with someone in a country where you don't understand the language, and poops, you pop in social skills and diversity skills, whatever. So the more you travel along life, the more you expose yourself, the more you realize where are you really good and where do you need more personal and professional development. So my educational philosophy is exposure. The more the merrier.
Sunil, I couldn't agree with Landi more. I mean, I think she's hit it on the head. There's an old saying that we've had around for years. When you meet somebody and they say, you know, I've got 10 years experience doing this. The saying is, well, do they have 1 year's experience 10 times, or do they actually have 10 years experience? And that's really what Landi's alluding to, is that when you travel and expose yourself to different aspects, you learn more about yourself. And in something like Entrepreneur X Factor, somebody who has X Factor is generally a very rounded person who's exposed. And if often I get asked on interviews, radio interviews and things like that, you know, what's the number one reason? Mike, can you tell us what's the number one reason entrepreneurs fail? And my answer is always the same, because they don't know who they are. So in a practical sense, an entrepreneur will start their own business. Let's say it's a printing company or something like that. And then every week they'll get up on Monday morning and they'll say, I have to ring people. I've got to do some marketing. I've got to make some sales. I've got to do this. I've got to. And then on Friday, they're beating themselves up going, oh, no, I didn't do that. Well, I'll double it next week, or I'll do more next week. And they don't. The reason why is because within themselves, they're not that type of person. They're probably better off in a job or in a partnership or doing something else within a business. So the more exposure that you can have to more things, and again, this comes back to my comments on education earlier, the difference between academic education and skill development, which is really about exposure. So again, going back to what Melinda said, She said Anne and her got on their bikes and they rode around, and they got some freedom at age 12. That gave them worldliness. And that worldliness of having to interact with adults and different people in their community and everything like that, that's where you really grow and develop. So, my philosophy on education is exactly the same as Landi's. It's expose yourself, because the other point I just want to fine tune on that before I hand over to Melinda is, for those of you that are young listening to this, I can't tell you how many 40, 50 and 60-year-olds we talk to who say, I don't know what I'm good at and I don't know what I should do with my life.
Yeah.
And the reason they say that is because they're unexposed.
Yeah.
So they don't know that they don't know. It's just like, until you sit down at a piano and start to play the piano, you don't know whether you're going to like it or not. Until you pick up a tennis racket or a badminton racket and start hitting the ball, or the shuttle, you don't know whether you're going to like it or not. So try a few different things and see what you like. Melinda.
I think she's frozen. Teacher Melinda?
I thought she was just incredibly intense.
Teacher Melinda, are you there?
While she gets out and comes back. Oh, there she is.
Oh, there she is.
It's frozen for a while.
All right, it's your turn now to share.
Okay. Yeah. My philosophy is that you never stop learning. Yeah. And also you don't know what you need. So as long as there is opportunity to learn and you're able to learn, you should just carry on learning. And and this learning need not be academic, it need not be in any particular field. It can be learning about yourself, learning about business, learning about marketing, whatever it is. As long as the opportunity comes your way, grab it, okay? Because you really don't know what you're going to need and whether you're going to be good at it. Just like what Mike said, you really don't know. So if you go into it, at least you try it and you've been exposed to it, then you know whether this is something that connects with you or not. And if it does, it might be something that you might actually use for the rest of your life. If not, then you've just added one additional skill or knowledge. Yeah. And I do agree, it is very, very important to know yourself. If you know your strength, your what you like and all that, it makes it easier to choose what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Okay. So my personal experience with that was I was searching for a few years after I started teaching, as in, what am I going to do next? Okay, I couldn't see myself teaching in the Singapore schools for the next 10, 15 years. I couldn't see it. Yeah, because there were things like I said, I just didn't agree with. So I was exploring going into business, but then what business? And I was very, very fortunate to come across Wealth Dynamics, and that's how I got to know Dave Rogers. And I'm forever thankful to Dave Rogers and Roger Hamilton for the Wealth Dynamics, because when I found out that my natural tendency is to be a supporter, then I was searching for a star or a creator for 5 whole years before I realized my own sister is the creator. So that really made it. Yeah, 5 years, seriously, it took me. And and that made a big difference, because I knew what I was strong at and what I could contribute. Whereas if I had tried to start my own business or create something, I realized that I probably would not have been able to follow through with it. So this is where non-stop learning makes a big difference. Yeah, and the willingness to shift and adapt whenever the need arises. Never be stuck with just it must be like this. Yeah. So that's my take on it.
All right, Teacher Melinda, whilst we're on your turn, there's actually a question from our Facebook live stream. I think it's directed to you. So the question is, Asian culture is very exam-centric and competitive. And how do you overcome this challenge as an educator?
Okay, so the exam-centric part and the focus is actually the parents, okay? So what we did was we gave the parents what they wanted, which is that the students would do well in the exams, okay? But it doesn't mean we have to teach them the traditional way. So that's what we did. So we prepared the students for the exams, but in a completely unconventional way, where the students are having fun and yet they're learning. And the best part is that whatever they learn it long. So imagine everything that is needed, okay, is learned, but the kids are enjoying themselves. They want to come to school. The best part is that they don't want holidays. Yeah. So you have teachers who are happy to come to school. You have students who are happy to come to school. And at the end of it, the exam results were fantastic, or they have been fantastic, and they've been increasing in terms of quality year in, year out. Okay. And we have our very first batch of students was from 2009. Okay. And the results have just been improving. It's crazy. And the thing is, knowing that we don't take only strong students, we take the students from across, whether from weaker, the average students to the very strong students, but our results are above average. Okay, so yes, give the parents what they want, okay, the results, and give the students what they want, which is the skills that they need.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So we've talked about your education. So now, moving on into the future, we've all mentioned about entrepreneurial schools and entrepreneurship being important. So I guess this can be for all of everyone as well. Everyone can give a take on this. So why is an entrepreneurial school in the future very important, and why is entrepreneurship in itself important? So I guess we can start with Mike.
Sure, great question, Sunil. Well, let me reverse the question. Entrepreneurship is important because you've got a world of over 7 billion people now, and because of even this year 2020 with COVID, a lot of those people are finding themselves without jobs. So if you've been an accountant for 10 years working in a mid-range corporate and now you're without a job, there's no jobs. And if you live in Africa or India or Bangladesh or somewhere else that's not considered a first world country, then you're really struggling, and your competition is huge to get those jobs. In fact, we partner with somebody in India who runs a very high level school there, like Dwi Emas, and from their perspective, they have to have a careers placement for them to exist and be competitive in the education industry, because to simply educate in India these days is not good enough. So therefore, what's the alternative? So the alternative is entrepreneurship. And why is it a good alternative? Because, if you interview 100 people who are currently in jobs, most of those people don't really want to be in the job that they've got. In fact, Forbes magazine in 2016 said 83% of people surveyed that are currently in a job are currently looking for another job. 83%. Nearly, 4 out of 5 people are looking for another job. So why are they looking for another job? Because the environment's not right. They can't make the money. They feel overworked. They don't feel like they're being valued. They don't feel like they're being recognized. They don't feel like all the things they learned are being put to good use, etc., etc. So the alternative becomes entrepreneurship. Yet, almost no one in the world is providing an entrepreneurial education system. And the ones that are, most of them are academics. So therefore, it doesn't work. You can't be taught entrepreneurship by an academic. And so Melinda and Anne, they're not academics. They've got the degrees. They are entrepreneurs who choose to use their academic abilities to provide greater opportunity for people who want to be entrepreneurs as well. Landi is an academic. You know, she's got Dean's Medal, cum laude, all the things you'd ever want to have, 3 degrees, masters, all that sort of stuff. Yet she's an entrepreneur and she teaches entrepreneurship. Why? Because entrepreneurship gives you something that we all seek in the human experience. We're just spirits having a human experience. And that's something that we seek is freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom to develop the incomes we want, freedom to live where we want, freedom to choose who we want to do business with. And, you know, if you're stuck in a mediocre corporate job, you don't have that freedom. You've got a ceiling on your income. You're boxed in what you can do. You have to deal with these clients, these people in your staff. You don't have that freedom. Entrepreneurship gives you that. But entrepreneurship, there's limited in the world at the moment, the people like Anne and Melinda who can actually teach that, because the other alternatives for the most part that we've come across, and we do business in over 50 countries around the world, are primarily academics pretending to be entrepreneurs. Whereas it's so important that entrepreneurship is taught by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, because only they can truly understand the pain points. And for us who work with entrepreneurs all of the time, it's not that difficult. And education over dramatizes that, whereas in entrepreneurship, we can simplify it right down. And that's it's really a very simple journey. Alan?
Yeah, I think, you know, entrepreneurship gives you choices, Sunil. Just like Mike said, you know, you actually have choice. You've seen this when this pandemic hit the world. You know, many people who sat in a job were sort of waiting for their manager to tell them now, do you now still have a job? Don't you have a job? You know, will we be paying your salary? Won't you get a salary? Blah, blah, blah. So they're sitting waiting for another person to make a decision over their life. Whereas an entrepreneur, you know, you may be, for example, the type of entrepreneur who ran a restaurant, and now the pandemic has struck, and now your restaurant's not really working anymore. But as an entrepreneur, you have skills, and now you're going to become a hot dog stand owner. You know, now you're going to buy yourself a trailer and you're going to park it here next to the road, and you're going to, you know, paint an octopus on it, and you're going to do hot dogs for people who pass, or you're going to do raw juices if that's your thing, you know. So now you can pivot, and we've seen it. It's actually so interesting. We just before this all happened, we were in New Zealand and we were doing a mastermind, and this one woman was owning a winery, and she said, well, she can't really do wine during COVID. And she says, but I have the machines of a winery, and apparently you can use the machines of a winery to distill gin. So because she's an entrepreneur, she turned her winery into a gin distillery overnight. And if that doesn't work, then you do something else. I mean, we have someone here down the road who had a restaurant, and I mean, we're still very much in lockdown. So the restaurants is opened here, but they're struggling. They're really, really suffering. I mean, some of these chefs and people really struggle. So what the restaurant down the road is doing, they're turning their restaurant into an Airbnb. You know, yesterday we drove by and it said, this is our food specials. And now you drove by and it says rooms to let. An entrepreneur can do that. An entrepreneur has the choices to do that.
Teacher Melinda,
I really want a hot dog stand.
I really want a hot dog stand, yeah.
She wants a hot dog stand. That's the key to all of this.
Yeah, that's the main message here, is I want a hot dog stand, yeah.
Yeah, it is really, entrepreneurship really is about the mindset. Yeah, so that's what we are training our students to be able to do, so that from very young, the mindset is right. And we have our 12 pillars on which we base the whole entrepreneurship system on. Things like, you know, think win-win-win, that together, you know, everybody can achieve more, so that the whole idea of teamwork, and then also empathy, what are you contributing to the society and things like that. So just getting that mindset right will give children that extra leverage when they go out there. because it doesn't matter what you end up doing, whether you end up working for somebody or you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur or you become a freelancer. There are all these opportunities available, but having that mindset allows you to shift to right, like now the keyword is pivot, which is what we did when the lockdown started, right? School is closed, so then what? You know, if we had not been thinking like entrepreneurs, we'd be like, oh dear, no school, so we're all stuck. Okay, but because we, in that few days where the announcement was made, there was a lockdown. Okay, all our teachers got ready. Okay, let's do online learning. And how do you do it? Let's do it for all the subjects, right? So we even have dance and sports and all that online. So the whole day of lessons was just as usual, right? And we had to make sure that the teachers were still teaching and the students were able to learn. So putting a lot of little things in place to make sure that that happens. That's all part of entrepreneurship, just shifting whenever the need arises, right? And as we move along, we are shifting some more. So there are more different schools coming up, all in line with what's coming up next. Okay, as in as the future shifts, as things change, as I mean, even universities not being able to run. What else is there then? Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that's happening, and that's why it is so important.
All right, so whilst we're on the topic on entrepreneurship, so there's a question on our Facebook page, another question. So the question is, I would think that not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Some just want to be an employee or academically inclined. So how do they cope with the VUCA world, and does an entrepreneurial school still help them, or should they just go for a normal school and be highly excelled at academics?
Okay, I'd like to answer that one. Okay, for those of you out there who employ people, if you have somebody who comes in just to work for you and nothing else, okay, I'm just here to work, all right, and you have another one who's there to work for you, but thinks of your business as his business. How can he make it better? What can he contribute to make things to make the business grow? What can he contribute in terms of making sure that people within the organization are working together and happy and you know being able to be productive? Which would you choose, right? And that's that difference.
Mike and Landi, anything y'all want to add on to this?
I think everyone has their place, you know. Some of you have, you know, sitting on this call and you've gone and you've visited a general practitioner or a doctor, or some of you had to get surgery done. And, you know, those people went through the academic system as well. So the way of teaching has not always been correct. You know, I think many surgeons and doctors and lawyers will tell you, jeepers, I wish I was taught the way Dwi Emas and Sri Emas is teaching people. They're making it so much more fun and practical. So the education in its entire system needs to change. But that goes for academics, for entrepreneurs, for everyone. But I do believe, you know, if you're sitting listening today and you're going, oh, you know, this whole entrepreneurial thing does not really, it's not my thing, then you don't have to go in that direction. But the world of entrepreneurship within the educational system is giving people choices. And even if you decide to go the academic route and become a general practitioner or a surgeon, you may end up being a surgeon having your own business anyway. So you have to learn about entrepreneurship. But if you're talking more about corporate, that you want to be an employee and just work for someone else because that's what you want to do, that's how you want to spend your energy, because you just want to have that type of lifestyle and then use your energy on other things as well, it's absolutely your choice. It's your choice in terms of career. In fact, it's your privilege to decide which way you want to go in order to get your education.
And I think Melinda talked about profiling and her finding out that she's a certain profile. So, and I think that, you know, for some people listening, not everybody's a natural entrepreneur. Not everybody is naturally creative. Not everybody, you know, I have a million ideas a minute, but I've come to learn in my life that I'm unusual. and most people are lucky to have one idea a week. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you can be a phenomenal part of an entrepreneurial team that eventually becomes a corporate. I mean, is Google a corporate or a bunch of entrepreneurs? They're a corporate. Is Facebook a corporate or a bunch of entrepreneurs? They're a corporate. So just because you might look at, I don't know, New York Life or one of the big insurance companies or a bank, originally a bank was some entrepreneur who had the idea to start the bank. So, you having some entrepreneurial skills is very useful, just like for us as entrepreneurs, having academic skills is very useful at the same time.
Very nice. So I actually have another question. It's what is your greatest challenge as an entrepreneur? But it sort of ties to a question on our Facebook page. So the question on the Facebook page is, what new challenges await potential entrepreneurs in the future with the new global national politics, economical and social shifts? So I guess you can share about your own challenges and what new challenges do you think would be up and coming with the changes in society? I guess this can be for everyone as well. We can start with teacher Melinda.
Okay. We really don't know. So by the looks of it, having a physical school may not be necessary anymore. All right. There's a shift, but then we still have our physical school. Then what else can we do with it? Okay. So that there is something coming up new on the third floor of Dwi Emas, where we're turning it into, it's going to look like a jungle up there. Yeah, because the focus is going to be about nature and so on, and about the environment. Okay, so there's going to be a new academy coming up. So there's going to be a shift. Okay, so what else is going to come up, we really, really don't know. But we see for sure that we have to go online somehow. Okay, and then, but even with online, how do you make sure that we are still able to get across the skills that are needed, the education that's needed? Okay, so that is a challenge, all right? But what else is going to come up next? Really, nobody knows.
So I think for me, Sunil, the challenge for entrepreneurs in the immediate future, and I'll say the next 1 to 2 years, because I don't think anybody has a crystal ball whatsoever, is going to be connection and connecting from heart. And I think it's going to be the fact that borders are closed. So you have to have social distancing at the moment and all of that sort of thing. I'm yet to see a politician social distance, but you have to have social distancing. So what that means is getting together in events where networking happens. If you ask any person who's 30 years old and over, they'll say most business is done at the bar. And that doesn't necessarily mean at a pub, but it means socializing with people, speaking heart to heart with people. And the challenge for entrepreneurs is how to create that heart to heart. And I think we're really lucky because we've been working online since 2005. So this is not a new thing for us. We haven't been thrown into this. But I can tell you that with all the Zoom calls I've been on and summits I've been on and webinars I've been on in the last 6 months, for most people, this is a huge challenge and they don't know how to connect and they don't know how to act and they just want to throw their arms around people and give them a hug, but they're not sure how to do it. So connection is a huge challenge for entrepreneurs, and politics is a huge challenge for entrepreneurs. And we could do a whole call on the politics of the world at the moment, but I think it suffice to say that in my experience, I have not seen a politician that I've come across anywhere in the world that is prepared for what we are going through or has any idea what to do, and they're leading countries. And I remember when I was in New Zealand in 2008 running an entrepreneur workshop with 80 people in the room, and it was the day after the New Zealand election, and the new Prime Minister of New Zealand, John Key, was in the next room doing his media interviews. And I said to everybody, let's come outside and let's line up. So when John Key comes out, we're all there and we can see the new Prime Minister and TV cameras and all of that sort of stuff. And he sort of came out and he was like surprised, because going down the hallway was like a wall of people on either side, like 40 people on either side. And I'm standing at the end just like this. And he naturally walked up and he said, hi. And I said, hi. And he shook my hand and I said, congratulations. He said, thanks very much. Had no idea who I was. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, we're actually running a workshop next door and we've got 80 entrepreneurs and we just wanted to come and say hello and, you know, just acknowledge you being voted in as Prime Minister and wish you all the best. And he said, that's great. And he said, I can tell you one thing. He turned around to everybody. He said, politicians are never going to change the world. We can't affect anything. He said, it's people like you, the entrepreneurs, who are going to be the true changers of this world and are going to make the world a better place. I just hope to put it in a position where you can do that. And I think that was one of the greatest talks, and it wasn't on camera. They filmed it, but it never was on the news or anything, of saying, this is our challenge. So entrepreneurs, those of you that are listening, we have to rise up. We have to get over ourselves. We have to do it. Melinda said, get in the mindset of being able to overcome the obstacles, because it's our responsibility to make this world a great place. It's our responsibility to clean this world up. It's our responsibility to lead people.
Stunning. So no, I think entrepreneurs has the same challenge today that what they had yesterday and what they will have tomorrow. And that is they get distracted too easily, you know. We just spoiled for choice. I mean, when last have you gone to a supermarket, you know, when I look for shampoo for my hair, I stand there, I have no idea which one to choose. There's just too many things. So sometimes I go, oh, maybe I just wish I had 5 shampoos to choose from. Then I can, you know, it's just easier. So the same thing happens with a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with as well. They get distracted by the news. They get distracted by the negative opinions of people around them. They get distracted by comparing themselves. Then they go, oh, now I want that business. Oh, now I want that product. So they start and stop constantly. Start, stop, start, stop, start. Now, of course, you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible. But many times the people in our experience that does very well is the people who just stick with one or two things, 1 or 2 ideas, test, practice, 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 do it well. If it doesn't work, then find another idea, test, practice, 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 do it well. But many people's all over the show. We many times are all over the show because there's so many choices, so many things you can choose from. So sticking to 1 or 2 things and doing it very well and not being distracted works very well. And then that goes for your internal distractions as well, you know, the monkeys in your mind. You know, rather than focus on business and growing as a healthy individual, you get distracted by your grudges and your unforgiveness and your issues and your stuff. So I think focus, entrepreneurs, the human race really struggle to focus.
Okay, so we've talked about entrepreneurship in itself. So now, person of my age or younger than me, probably a question that we have is, why is it important to equip children or teenagers or young people with entrepreneurial skills? And why having schools that teach it will help in this reason per se of why it's important? So I guess this is also for everyone, but mainly for Teacher Melinda as well, because you currently run an entrepreneurial school. So yeah, you can take it away.
Okay, so I guess we have been focusing on, you know, what else we can give to students. And when Dwi Emas came about, we realized that we had to put in that entrepreneurial component. But the reality is that from the point that we started schooling, which is the PTS Pusat Tuition Series and Dwi Emas, we've already put in all the necessary components for entrepreneurship. So the actual component called Powerpreneur is like the icing on the cake, that one extra bit that wraps everything up together. Okay, so we've got young entrepreneurs who are actually on our call right now. Sheldon and Emerson, they have been entrepreneurs on their own, and they joined us because of the Young Entrepreneur X Factor, which was run last year. So maybe Sunil, you want to share a little bit about that, so that and how we have pivoted it this year, and very much because of Mike and Landi giving us the opportunity to organize it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll cover that in a bit. Mike and Lani, do you have anything to add on what teacher Melinda said about the importance?
Sunil, I think for me, the entrepreneurial skill teaches 2 or 3 things that I never learnt at school. One of them is communication and how to actually even do a deal. Because as Landi said before, when you're doing a deal, you're learning social skills. And, I didn't learn social skills. I often said, I wish I'd been taught networking at school. I was never taught that. I ignored all of the people I went to school with when I left because I didn't really want to be associated with them. But a lot of them, if I'd kept them in my network, I would have fast-tracked a lot faster. The second one, I think, is financial literacy. And that's something that's missing for a lot of people. There's, we have a client of ours, she's the #1 financial planner in her country. She said she couldn't tell us how many people come to her that are making huge incomes, CEOs who are broke because they can't manage their money. So financial literacy and, is a second one. And I think for me, if I think a third one, it's just actually what Melinda referenced, which is understanding personalities, how to deal with different people differently. And I think that's really important, something I never learned at school. Darling?
I think entrepreneurship, Sunil, gives you confidence, because you put goals out there and you achieve those goals and you start seeing the results, and those goals is not set out for you by anyone else. So you create the goals and you achieve the goals. And the more you get that right, the more you build real good confidence. And I think the other thing is entrepreneurship make you use your ears, you listen to people's problems. You choose your target markets of people that you want to help. And then what you do, once you've chosen them, you've decided you want to work with CEOs or you want to work with whoever's problem you want to solve. You have to listen to those people. You have to really listen to what is their problem in order to create products and services that's going to solve those problems. So entrepreneurship really help you to get into yourself with means of confidence, but it also helps you to get over yourself by more listening to other people.
I guess I could definitely agree.
I want to add on.
Oh, okay, sure.
Sunil, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on about effectuation. It's a term that we came across recently, but we realized we've been using it and doing it all this time. And that is like when you have the idea and you know what you want to do, you find the resources that's necessary to get it done. You don't wait until you have all the resources and then get started. And that is precisely what we do when we have our theme days. Okay, so the theme days is about, okay, this is the idea, this is the theme. Okay, find whatever you have and decide on what you want to dress up as. This is our theme day in our school is where we have a theme for the day and the kids have to decide how they're going to address that theme. So we've had like crazy wacky hair day, we've had fairy tale day. So they decide what they're going to do, but we tell them, don't go and spend money to go and rent costumes and stuff like that. Just find whatever you have at home or, that you can borrow and reuse, repurpose, and create that theme. So that is essentially teaching all of you effectuation.
Yeah. And resourcefulness, stunning.
Yes.
That's really interesting. I was saying just now I could definitely relate and understand where y'all are coming from, because I personally also run a small business. So technically, myself, I'm also an entrepreneur. So definitely what y'all are saying makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm glad I heard it from y'all. So let's touch on what Teacher Melinda mentioned just now about YEX. Before we get to YEX, I guess we can talk about the Entrepreneur X Factor, which I believe y'all started before YEX. So this is probably for Mike. what is the entrepreneur X factor and what is the X factor in itself?
Great questions, Neil. I'll keep it brief for you because we want to focus on young entrepreneur X factor. But we realized years and years ago that you didn't have to be the smartest entrepreneur to be the most successful. You didn't have to be the most liked. You didn't have to have the best product. You didn't have to have the cheapest product. But some entrepreneurs, it didn't matter what they touch, they had like the Midas touch. And we realized that that was X factors. So in 2012, I grabbed the brand X Factor, the website, the trademarks and everything like that. And from 2012 to 2016, we ran a global competition where we would run X Factor competitions in many countries. 26 in 1 year was the most number of countries that we did. Everywhere from started in New Zealand, finished in Norway, in fact. And from that came books. And in fact, the new Entrepreneur X Factor books just come out. It's on Amazon last week. Went to #1 on release. So that was great. And that's really the story of X Factor and how it came about. But young Entrepreneur X Factor is really a different thing because in the basis of X Factor is really 4 key things. It's where your passion and your competence meet. So where something you're good at and something that you love meets, and that gives you something that's really special. That's the first thing. It's the ability to be present. And what I mean by being present is most of us are living in the past or the future. Those listening to this now are probably thinking, when's this over? I'm going to have lunch or dinner or something. That's not being present. The third thing is asking quality questions. So really understanding that there are quality questions that fast track you, and the quality of our life doesn't come down to the answers we have, it comes down to the questions. And the last part of X Factor, if you like, is really having that brilliant listening mind so that you can assimilate information, because the more you talk, the less you'll get anywhere. The more you listen, the more you'll absorb, which is why learning is great. And so therefore, we understood that it was so important through watching what Anne and Melinda did that everybody from really age 6 or 7 upwards, and yourself, Sunil, who has a business, can actually learn and develop X Factor, because it is a skill that can be developed. It's not like charisma. X Factor can be developed over time. Sometimes people have charisma and they're just naturally more charismatic. But X Factor, with the combination of these things, can just stand you above the rest.
That's really cool. So young entrepreneur X Factors, I understand, is for ages 6 to 17. So basically for the younger target market. So what does this mean to us, as in people like me, and how would it impact us around the world? Because I understand it's a global event. So I guess, how could it impact us?
I guess you'd like me to answer that, so I'll keep going and then...
Yeah, I guess you could add on to what you said just now. Yeah,
sure. I think it's going to give you exposure and confidence. You know, I never had that confidence when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. But if I had have gone into a competition like this, it's going to give you 2 of the greatest skills that, regardless what the economy does, regardless what happens in the world, they're going to be 2 of the greatest skills that you can have in the next 30 years. Skill number 1 is your ability to sell your idea one to many, because selling it one to one takes a lot of time. And it doesn't matter whether you get a job or what you're doing, you're going to have to convince people of your point of view. And so it's going to give you certainty that you have the ability to convince people in a one-to-many basis and experience in doing that. And secondly, I think it's going to give you an idea of how the world relates to you and your ideas and what's in your heart. And I think that if I had have known that when I was, again, 12, 13, 14 years old or even younger, then if I'd have known how the world related to me, then I would have found my place in the world much quicker and I would have had much more success in my life. But, you know, as a child, I was probably always thought children should be seen and not heard. I'll just sit in the corner and do nothing. I'll do my assignments and be a good boy. But that's not the case anymore. You know, we want to celebrate genius. And there's, you know, whether you are a concert pianist at age 4, or whether you have the ability to launch a very successful international brand at age 12, our youngest client was 9 years old when he became our client. He's from Dublin, Ireland. These days, he's 16 years old, and he runs a very successful, internationally award-winning startup out of Silicon Valley. So, you know, it does, and he knew that right from 9 years old what he wanted to do with his life. So I think this is a place to celebrate the genius of youth.
Oh, so that's very interesting. So I guess I don't have much else to ask. We can move on to Q&A. So I'm going to open the board for everyone to ask questions through Zoom and Facebook. So the people on Facebook, you guys can enter the questions into the chat. And for the people in the Zoom call, you all can raise your hand and you can just straight away use your mic and ask it, or you can also enter it into the chat if you want. So we're going to open the board for about 20 minutes before we end today's session. Oh yeah, we had a question earlier, but we saved it for Q&A. So the first question would be, how do you get the same exposure of travel in the post-pandemic world that the youth are stepping into? So I think this is for Mike and Landi, because y'all mentioned y'all travel a lot. So how do y'all get the same amount of exposure with this post-pandemic where y'all can't travel much?
Well, I think what we're looking at now, even though, Sunil, no one's really sure what it's going to look like. We had a lot of surety before this happened. Like I said, we were meant to travel to 17 countries this year. So I think we're looking at a sort of wave situation. It's going to come and go in waves. So you're going to have to learn to sort of, you know, adapt your travel plans with these waves. So for example, you know, we've learned a very big lesson. I mean, we had to, when COVID literally started, we had to make a decision within the hour whether we're going to remain in New Zealand or come to South Africa. So you know, you should be willing to do that. The next decision that we're going to have to face is whether we are willing to take all this vaccines, and whether we're happy in future to travel with an immunity certificate, something we've not had to do before. The next thing is, you know, we're going to have to make decisions about which countries do we want to work with in future, which types of clients do we want, and that decision is going to be based on which countries are more regulated, which are less regulated, which countries is more open for international business, which countries are more close to international business. So as an entrepreneur wanting to travel, you're going to have to probably educate yourself a little bit better in terms of, you know, travel pros and travel cons. And you're going to have to do a little bit more homework on the type of countries you want to travel to. And then, of course, whether you want to travel or whether you want to rather go with online business. So those are all considerations for us at the moment.
And I think just to add to that, you know, we've really enjoyed doing business in Malaysia. Every time we've been there, and we've been there a lot, I've lost count, you know, 30, 50 times, I don't know. But it may be that we have to develop doing business in Panama or Ecuador because of what Landi said. But in terms of being young and looking at this long term, one of the things I'd suggest is this is a great opportunity for anybody listening from any country around the world to embrace diversity. You know, this is the time where you can learn from people in Africa, you can learn from people in America, you can learn from people in Tokyo. And so, you know, you've all got them on your Facebook profiles, but how much have you actually talked to them prior to actually, you know, this pandemic, and how much have you actually embraced them? So I would suggest that you reach out and start to learn about their countries and learn about their cultures, because their cultures are going to become more cultural if they become less worldly.
Maybe just adding on to that as well is, for the person listening today who's the entrepreneur who wants to travel, I want to say that the places you wanted to travel to may change because of what's happening here. But if you have traveling in your blood, you'll find a way to travel. You'll travel. It's just different places you'll travel to.
All right, so we have a question from Zoom call. Byron, you had your hand raised. I guess you could turn on your mic and go ahead and ask.
All right. Thank you, Sunil. Mike, Landi, great to see you again, both.
Hi, Byron.
Question related to the liberal arts. So many years ago, the liberal arts were taught in schools and it was part of the standard curriculum. But as we know, about 100 years ago, it was gently squeezed out of the education system. And there seems to be a push to try to get those liberal arts, also known as the trivium and the quadrivium, back into the mainstream, or at least to give us a chance to start using those skills once again. So just to familiarize everybody, the trivium was basically the three things that gave people critical thinking. So for example, you'd have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And with that, you could actually take any piece and analyze it for fallacy and also use that as a way to educate yourself. So in your perspective, what is the likelihood of that kind of education system coming back and making a dent in today's world?
Okay, I'll start because Landi's thinking. I think it will come back in some way, Byron. Newton's law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the more people are going to text speak, and grammar, for instance, is going out the window, the more other people will go, we have to stop this. We have to protect our language. We have to stop all these shortenings. That's hence my comments early on in this call about, you know, the VUCA world, and that's just the thing we have these days. And, you know, let's Google it. I mean, all of those things are going to disappear in time. Go and read a book that was written in the 10th century and you won't understand most of what's said. So I think that will come back, but not in any big way. And I find it really interesting that you pulled 3 of the 5 things of the Templar Knights disciplines in your question. So I found that fascinating as well.
Byron, from my side, the big shift I'm seeing here is I think the shift from education being prescriptive of what should be in and out of a curriculum, as opposed to the people creating the demand. You know, what Dwi Emas has done very well is to look at the people, the students, and what do they require. And they've co-created subjects and decided based on that what should be in and outside of a curriculum, especially in the entrepreneurial school. So the question of whether it will be coming back or not will really depend on the demand, on the people, on the students, on what they want to create. When you spoke, the thing that popped into my mind immediately was, you know, during our travels, if you talk about art in general, you know, you travel in some parts of the world and you see art all around you. So it feels that in those parts of the world, it's still very much alive. But then in many other parts of the world, you travel and it's like art has been completely extracted from that country. So it's going to be incredibly interesting over the next few years to see what is it that students demand, what subjects is it that they demand, and see how that filters back into the curriculum and the educational systems.
Teacher Melinda, anything to add on from your side of view?
I think in this day and age, it really is going to make a big difference if people have that critical thinking skills to be able to tell what we have been told is true or not, what you can find on the internet, to decide for yourself whether what are the things that I can explore, I can check to find out if this is real and whether it's even possible. Yeah, because I have had students who see things on YouTube and they said, you know that you can do this and so on. And I asked them, like, have you actually tried it out? Have you checked it out? And when we actually explore it in school and test out the experiment, they don't work. Yeah. So there are a whole lot more out there that we don't know is true or not. So that having that ability to make that decision to explore, to find out, I think is going to be quite essential.
All right. I hope that answers your question. So we have one more question from Facebook. So it says, back then, just now, you mentioned convince people with your heart to buy your idea. So is it necessary to learn the language of commercial speaking? I think this is open for any one of you to answer.
Look, as I'm gonna take my fallback position as a Gemini snake who just puts in an incredible amount of emphasis on words and language. So, you know, it's not necessarily just commercial speak, but you need to learn the language of the environment in which you're walking. So if you're playing the entrepreneurial game, you want to learn the entrepreneurial lingo. Why? Because it's going to help people to trust you as an expert in your field. If you're playing the corporate game, you need to learn the corporate lingo. If you're playing the commercial game, you need to learn that. If you want love, you need to learn the love languages. If you want to, you know, be a digital marketer, you need to learn the languages associated with that. Will that be a static language that stays the same like the alphabet from A to Z? No, it will constantly change. And so you have to up the language of the environment in which you're playing. You have to up that skill all the time. So yes, if you want to play the commercial game, you have to learn the commercial language, and you have to also stay up to date of what the commercial language is right now and what it's becoming.
And I think just to put a comment on that, Landi's absolutely right. But if you default to commercial language to do a deal and there's no heart in it, you're not going to do business in the new world. And you're going to, you know, gone are the days, and thankfully, that people can go to a sales training course and learn all these smash them, close them where they land techniques and, you know, do business and take money off people and things like that. People are more intuitive these days. And I think that's another thing that having an entrepreneurial school and is taught is to trust your gut. I don't know one billionaire who made their money and had their success based on anything more than trusting their gut. So but most people don't even know how to trust their gut, and most people don't know if their gut is telling them the truth or not. So, you know, if you're going to go with just learned behavior in future, I think, you know, you're going to struggle. Keep it real. Authenticity is the #1 sales tool of the next 10 years at least.
All right. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
so,
I totally agree.
Oh,
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Mike. And I think essentially it is speaking from the heart, and people can tell. Yeah. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a commercial language, a business language, whatever it is when you speak from the heart, and that's where you're coming from, people will be able to tell. And that will be what connects people.
all right. So I think we're going to open the floor to one last question because we're running out of time. So if in the next 1 minute we don't get another question, I'll just move on to the next part. So you can ask, reminder, you can ask on Facebook, Zoom, raise your hand, anything works. Doesn't look like any questions are coming through at the moment.
I think we can move on.
Yeah, I guess we can just move on. So before we end today's session, I'd like to go to the last point. So the right piece of advice can change lives. So if each of you could give a piece of advice for all of us, what would it be? So we can start with Mike.
Very simple answer to this question, Sunil, is for everybody who's listening, who's at any stage of their journey, and more importantly, at the start of your journey, follow your heart. Do what you want to do. Follow what makes sense to you. Follow your passion. Follow your dreams. Don't let anybody shoot your dreams down. anybody at all. If you believe in them and you believe that that's what you want to do, then make it happen and you'll have a great life.
Landi?
There's so many things. Is this advice specifically for an entrepreneur, Sunil?
I think it's in general advice that can change anyone's lives.
Wow. My advice would be to really start understanding, the bigger picture. Meaning, start realizing that you're one drop in an ocean. And so if you really want to understand yourself better, that one drop is to start to understand the ocean. So realize there's bigger things happening than yourself. Realize there's a whole universe. Realize there is communities. Realize there's cultures with different belief systems. It's our expand your mind. We hear it so many times, think out of the box. Thinking out of the box and expanding your mind means being willing to tread on paths, educate yourself, and go into the areas that is very, very different from what you know now. And that's why the VUCA world, the unknown world, is not your enemy. It's your biggest friend. It's going to feel uncomfortable. Just because something feels uncomfortable, or it's a culture or a teaching or something out of your comfort zone, the fact that it's feeling uncomfortable is probably your cue that you should go very much in that direction.
All right, Teacher Melinda.
Okay, I feel that all of us need to always learn, keep learning, and be open to learn. It can be through any form, anybody. For example, I felt I learned a lot watching TV, watching movies, right? And I also learned a lot speaking to people. I also love to attend seminars and workshops and so on. It didn't matter what they were. While I was teaching in Singapore, I went for NLP courses. I went for business training. I went for the millionaire, the 1 Minute Millionaire training, even though I was a teacher. So it doesn't matter as long as you keep learning, because you really don't know when it's going to come handy and when you're going to need it. Okay. And I felt that this has helped me when it comes to teaching in schools, because I can pull in all these experiences and share with my students. And it makes the learning just beyond the classroom. It's not just within the textbook. Yeah. So do keep that open mind and always look for opportunities to learn.
All right, I think that's it. Any of y'all have any last things y'all would like to add on? If not, I guess we can wrap it up. All right, so I'd like to give a shout out to YEX Facebook first. It's going to be posted into the Zoom chat and the Facebook chat. You guys can go ahead and check it out in your free time. And also, let's just wrap it up. So thank you all so much for coming and listening to our chat. It's a bit long today. So a big thank you to our speakers. Thank you all so much. And there'll be also a link sent for a post speech form. So there's a feedback form for you to fill up as participants. So it'll also be sent to both Facebook and the Zoom chat. You can go ahead and fill it up. It'll be greatly appreciated to get your feedback. And last but not least, I'll give a shout out to next week's workshop. So this workshop, there'll be another workshop happening next week. It'll be on Sunday, 9th of August. The title is Dare to Fail. The speakers will be Eugene and CJ Lim, the Powerpreneur members of ACE EdVenture. And they'll be talking about a quote called a quote that says, "Do not be embarrassed by your failures. Learn from them and start again." It's by Richard Branson. He's a business magnitude investor, author, and philanthropist. This is a 2-hour online facilitated workshop through an experiential game with Powerpreneur. So they'll be touching on some certain points. So you can go ahead and check out the links and tune in next week's workshop. I think that's all from us. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Y'all can check out the links.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank
Bye.
you, team. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Sunil, great job. Well done.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Melinda. Bye.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Sunil.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Team Young Entrepreneur Expector.